As discussed in the previous lectures, we can decorate our member variables or properties with the uProperty macro. That is, for the reflection system, we can mark those with the uProperty. I've also demonstrated some of the specifiers that we can pass into the uProperty macro. Now, as with properties, we can decorate our member functions with the UFUNCTION macro. And in this lecture, I will discuss the specifiers that we can pass into that UFUNCTION macro in the dummy actor header. For this example, let's create some functions to set and get the hit points. I will declare a setter, set hit points, which will take in the new hit points, and we decorate that with the uFunction macro. I will also declare a getter, get hit points, which will return a float. Of course, you can use an integer type for these variables, such as int32 for example. I'm just using float here. Thus we want to modify the object, so I'll make it const. Let's briefly discuss the specifiers that we will pass in for the uFunction macro before we move on. In the same way we decorate member variables with the uProperty macro, we also decorate member functions with the uFunction macro. That is, placing the uFunction macro on the line above the function declaration in the header file, similar to what we've done with the uProperties, so that those properties and functions are recognized by the Unreal Engine reflection system, even if you don't provide any specifiers. But of course, the specifiers allow us to call the functions from the blueprint graphs, for example, such as blueprint callable. The function can be invoked in the blueprint graph, and the same thing with blueprint pure, the function can be invoked in the blueprint graph. But with blueprint pure, the function does not affect the state of the owning object, and is used for getters and functions that perform calculations, such as make rotator for example. So basically we use blueprint pure if we want to do some sort of a calculation and return the result of that calculation, and that function or calculation that we do does not affect the state of the owning object. The blueprint callable functions are typically blue and have the execution pin going in and out, whereas the blueprint pure functions are green and do not have the execution pin. Blueprint pure functions are typically executed when you execute another function, such as a callable function. For example, we may get some value such as our hit points or our armor. We return the value of that and then we print that out using the print function. So basically when the execution reaches the printf function, it is going to invoke the blueprint pure function, return that result. Finally, program execution returns to the printf function and we get the result printed out. To begin, I will specify these as blueprint callable, quick actions and refactorings, and I will create the definitions for those in the CPP file. In the source file, let's assign the new hit points to the object hit points member. For the get hit points function, we will return the hit points, build and run. Back in your dummy actor blueprint, I will move these out of the way. Now if we search for hit points, we get our functions. Notice the difference between the variables and the functions. The functions have an F, that prefix there, and the variables will have their color association. Now we can get the hit points with our custom getter, and we can set the hit points with our custom set hit points function. Another interesting thing is if you right click on the node, we can select go to definition. Visual Studio will then jump to the definition of that function. To demonstrate, I will right click on the get hit points and I will select go to definition. Notice that we jump to the definition of that function. So this is not just for functions implemented in blueprints, just another trick for you there. We can also comment these functions and the comments will show up in the editor. To demonstrate, I will write simple comments for these functions. Save those changes. Notice that our comments do not show up properly. We get the defaults when we hover over the node. This may happen. You can build outside of the editor and then restart it as I've demonstrated. I will search for that get hit points again as an example. And notice that our comments show up in this menu when we hover over the function. If we drop down in your node, our comments should show up when we hover. You will experience these kinds of issues with the live coding feature. So again, if you want those to go away and if you want those changes to take effect, without replacing all of those nodes, for example, then you will have to build outside of the editor and restart the editor. Next, I will specify blueprint pure for the functions. Save those changes. And let's recompile using the live coding feature to see what happens. We get this error in the live coding console. Blueprint pure specifier is not allowed for functions with no return value and no output parameters. The error here is with the set hit points. It is void and it does not have any output parameters. I will set the functions back to blueprint callable and remove the cons for get hit points. Save those changes. Go back to the editor and recompile. Notice that get hit points is not a pure function anymore. It has this execution pin and it's this blue color now. I will specify blueprint pure for get hit points. Save all and recompile. The get hit points function is green again, but this time we don't have the target input. Make get hit points const again. Save all. Recompile. And we get that get hit points pure function again. Get the hit points and print those out. Set the hit points to 50, for example. I will copy those nodes over to get and print the hit points out again. Compile and save, and now if I play in a new editor window, those values print out 150. By default, the print string will have a duration of 2 seconds, so we can go in and modify those to 10 seconds. Compile and save, and if I play in the new editor window again, those printouts will stick around for a bit longer. Also notice in the world outliner, if I have the instance of the dummy actor blueprint selected, the hit points has been modified to 50. That is because we have set the hit points on begin play in the event graph.